The red earth roads of the village stretched like tired veins across the land. When the wind blew, dust rose gently and settled on the clay houses with rusted tin roofs. Tall baobab trees stood like ancient guardians, their thick trunks holding stories older than any living soul. Goats wandered freely, children chased one another barefoot, and women balanced baskets on their heads with quiet grace. This was a village that walked with one foot in the past and one foot in the present. Donkey carts moved slowly beside roaring motorbikes. The sharp ring of a mobile phone sometimes interrupted the steady beat of pestles grinding grain. Yet even as change crept in like morning light, the old ways still ruled the hearts of the people. In this land, a family name was heavier than gold. Marriage was not just between two people, it was a bridge between clans. A husband's authority was rarely questioned, and a wife's patience was praised as a crown of honor. A home stands when respect stands, the elders often said. And everyone believed it. At the center of the village grew the largest baobab tree. Its branches spread wide like the arms of an old mother gathering her children. Beneath that tree, the elders met. They sat on carved wooden stools, their walking sticks resting beside them. When disputes rose like storms, people gathered under its shade. No voice was louder than tradition there. "Remember," the oldest elder would often say, his voice slow and deep, "the tree sees what the eye forgets." The baobab was more than wood and leaves. It was witness, judge, and silent keeper of secrets. Under its shade, lies trembled and truth stood tall. Among the villagers lived Amina, a young woman whose name was spoken with gentle respect. She had been raised by parents who believed that character was richer than cattle. From childhood, she was taught to lower her voice but raise her values. Her mother would tell her, "A woman's strength is not in shouting. It is in standing firm when the wind blows." Amina grew into a quiet and graceful wife. She greeted elders with bowed head and warm eyes. She worked from sunrise to sunset without complaint. When other young women laughed loudly in groups, she listened more than she spoke. But her silence was not weakness. It was the calm of deep water. Many in the village admired her. "That girl carries honor like a pot on her head," one woman once whispered. "Steady and unshaken." She was married to Cato, a man who once shone like a bright star in the village sky. In his younger days, Cato had charm that could soften even the hardest hearts. He was strong in the fields and quick with clever words. People used to say, "Cato will go far. His dreams are bigger than this village." But dreams can become heavy when they are not fed. As seasons passed, Cato began to feel a shadow following him. It was not a shadow others could see, but it lived inside him. His harvests were not always strong. His plans did not always succeed. And whenever people spoke of success, another name often followed, Jabari. Jabari was Amina's older brother, a soldier serving in the city far away. He wore a uniform that carried authority. His boots stepped with discipline. Though he rarely returned home, his name carried weight. When he visited, children stared at him with wide eyes. Men straightened their backs in his presence. "He protects the nation," villagers would say proudly. Jabari had helped Amina and Cato when drought struck their land. Quietly, without asking for praise, he sent money to support their farm. Cato accepted it with a smile, but deep inside, something bitter began to grow. "I am the man of my house," Cato once muttered to himself at night. "Why must her brother stand taller than me?" The more he thought about it, the smaller he felt. And the smaller he felt, the louder his pride spoke. Far from the village, in the busy town where lights shone even after sunset, lived Lela. She was different from the women of the red earth. She wore bright dresses and walked with bold confidence. She liked laughter, music, and the comfort of soft things. Where village women carried water pots, Lela carried handbags. Cato first met her when he traveled to town to sell produce. Her smile was sharp and inviting. She spoke to him in a way that made him feel important again. "You are not meant for small places," she once told him, her eyes shining. "A man like you deserves more." Those words were like sweet palm wine. They warmed him and clouded his thoughts. Around Lela, he felt admired, not compared. He began to visit town more often. Back in the village, Amina waited patiently each time he left. She trusted her husband as she had been taught. "A woman builds her home with faith," her mother had said on her wedding day. But faith cannot silence jealousy when it begins to whisper. In the evenings, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold, elders still gathered beneath the baobab tree. They spoke of harvests, marriages, and discipline. They reminded young men that authority must be guided by wisdom. Yet even under that watchful tree, unseen seeds were being planted, seeds of pride, comparison, and temptation. The Red Earth village seemed peaceful, but beneath its calm surface, tension moved quietly like a snake in tall grass. Tradition stood strong, but change pressed at its doors. Honor was praised, but pride was growing in a man's heart. And in that quiet space between old ways and new desires, the story of Amina and Cato began to unfold, watched by the ancient baobab that had seen many men rise, and many men fall. On the day Amina became Cato's wife, the village shone like it had been washed by blessing. Drums beat from morning until the sun stood high. Women ululated, and men clapped their hands in pride. Beneath the great baobab tree, elders sat in a circle, their faces serious but pleased. "A home built with respect will stand against storms," the oldest elder declared. "But a home built on pride will crack like dry earth." Amina's family came with generous gifts, goats with strong legs, baskets filled with grain, and bright cloth folded with care. These gifts were not payment, they were bridges between families. Jabari, her brother serving far away in the military, sent money and farming tools. Though absent, his support carried weight. Cato accepted everything with a smile. His chest was full, his steps confident. People praised the union. "You are lucky," one neighbor said. "Your wife comes from a strong family." "Yes," another added, "and her brother is a man of honor." Cato nodded, but inside him, something small and sharp began to press against his pride. He was grateful for the help, yet he did not like that others spoke Jabari's name with such admiration. Each praise sounded to him like a reminder that another man stood behind his success. At night, when Amina slept peacefully, Cato stared into the darkness. "I am the head of this house," he whispered to himself. "Why does her brother's shadow stretch into my doorway?" Days passed, and the harvest improved. The farm grew stronger with the help Jabari had provided. But gratitude turned slowly into discomfort. The more people praised the support, the more Cato felt his pride bruised. Then the whispers began. At the well, women leaned close to each other. "I saw Amina walking alone toward the road," one said quietly. "Perhaps she misses her family too much," another replied. "No smoke without fire," a third murmured. Their words were light, careless, but words have wings. They flew from mouth to mouth until they reached Cato's ears. One afternoon, as he returned from the field, a man stopped him. "Brother, guard your house well. A man who trusts too easily may wake up alone." The man laughed lightly, but Cato did not. His heart tightened. He began watching Amina in ways he never had before. When she greeted neighbors, he studied her face. When she stepped outside, he asked questions. "Where are you going?" he demanded one morning. "To fetch oil from the market," she answered softly. "Go and return quickly," he said. "Do not wander." Amina felt the coldness in his voice. "Have I ever given you reason to doubt me?" she asked gently. Cato looked away. A man must protect his name. Trust and pride fought inside him like two stubborn bulls locking horns. Instead of seeking truth, he listened to fear. One evening, as the sky turned red and men gathered under a wooden shelter to drink palm wine, the gossip grew louder. "I hear your wife walks proudly these days," one man teased. "You are too soft," another said. "A woman must know her place." The palm wine was sweet, but it burned as it went down Cato's throat. Each word mixed with his wounded pride. Laughter surrounded him, and he felt smaller with every joke. When he rose to leave, his thoughts were no longer clear. The night air felt heavy. The moon watched silently as he walked home with anger in his steps. Amina was waiting at the doorway. "You are late," she said kindly. "Your food is warm." Her kindness felt like mockery to him. "Tell me the truth," he demanded suddenly. "What truth?" she asked, her brows tightening in confusion. "Who do you meet? Why do people speak your name?" "I meet no one," she replied firmly. "I am your wife." My honor is yours." But jealousy had already filled his ears like buzzing flies. Behind the house stood an old iron cage once used for goats. Its bars were rusty, its door heavy. It had not been used in years. Without thinking of elders, without seeking counsel, Cato grabbed Amina's arm. "If you are innocent, you will endure discipline," he said coldly. "Discipline for what crime?" she cried. "For bringing shame," he answered, though he had no proof. Before she could resist, he pushed her inside and locked the door. The sound of iron closing echoed across the compound like a drumbeat of disgrace. Neighbors gathered slowly. "Cato, this is too harsh," an elderly woman warned. "I am the man of my house," he replied loudly. "I will correct what is wrong." Fear sealed their lips. No one stepped forward. Morning came with a fierce sun. Amina sat inside the cage, her back against cold metal that soon grew hot. Dust clung to her skin. Hunger tightened her stomach. Shame tried to press her head down, but she lifted her face toward the sky. "The earth knows the truth," she whispered, "and truth does not burn under the sun." Children stared from a distance until their mothers pulled them away. Some women wiped tears quietly. Some men shook their heads but remained silent. The cage stood as a cruel symbol, an innocent woman trapped by her husband's pride. Tradition had been twisted into something ugly. Yet even in that suffering, Amina's spirit did not break. Her dignity stood taller than the iron bars around her. And as the sun climbed higher, unseen by Cato, the seeds of consequence were already taking root in the soil of the village. The road leading into the region was quiet when Jabari returned. He wore simple clothes, dust clinging to his boots, his soldier's bag resting firmly on his shoulder. He did not send word ahead. He wanted to surprise his sister. His heart was light, for he believed her home was strong and her marriage blessed. As he passed the hills and crossed the dry stream, a strange feeling brushed against his spirit, like wind before a storm. "May my sister be well," he murmured. "May her husband guard her with honor." He did not know that fate was already walking faster than his steps, guiding him toward a house clouded by shame. Back in the village, the sun burned fiercely above Amina's head. The iron cage behind the house glowed under the afternoon heat. The earth itself seemed to cry, cracking open under the weight of the sun. Inside the cage, Amina sat quietly. Sweat rolled down her face. Her lips were dry. Hunger tightened her stomach like a rope pulled too hard. But the pain in her heart was heavier than thirst. She lifted her eyes to the sky. "You who see all things," she whispered softly, "bear witness to my innocence." The sky did not answer, but it did not turn away. The silent air stood still, as if listening. Even the birds avoided the tree nearby, as though they feared to sing near such injustice. People passed by. Some women slowed their steps. "May God strengthen her," one whispered under her breath. "She must have done something," another said nervously, though doubt flickered in her eyes. They wanted to speak louder. They wanted to knock on Cato's door. But fear wrapped around their courage like chains. The men gathered at the shade of a mango tree. "A man must control his household," one declared. "Yes," another agreed. "Discipline keeps order." Yet none of them asked for proof. None of them questioned whether discipline had turned into cruelty. Their nods were weak, their agreement empty. Children stood at a distance, staring at Amina through the iron bars. "Why is she inside like a goat?" one small boy asked. "Be quiet," his mother snapped, pulling him away. "This is not for children." But the child's question floated in the air, heavier than the elder's silence. The cage, once built for animals, now held a faithful wife. It stood as a bitter symbol. Tradition had been twisted like a rope pulled too far. Authority had been used without mercy. An old man passing by shook his head slowly. "When tradition loses kindness," he muttered, "it becomes a weapon." Inside the cage, Amina closed her eyes. She remembered the wedding day, the drums, the laughter, the blessings spoken under the great tree. "A home built on trust will not fall," the elder had said. Those words now tasted bitter in her mouth. Her loyalty had not changed. Her heart had not wandered. Yet she was treated like a criminal. "So this is how love turns," she whispered to herself. Pride enters quietly, and love forgets its own face. Tears filled her eyes, but did not fall. She would not give shame the victory of seeing her broken. While she endured the burning sun, Cato walked toward town. Dust rose behind his feet with each heavy step. He did not look back at the house. He did not look at the cage. His heart was hardened by gossip and wounded ego. She must learn, he told himself. I am the man of this house. Yet deep inside, a small voice tried to speak. He silenced it. In town, laughter and palm wine waited. Music floated through the air. Temptation opened its arms wide. A man who should have guarded his home now walked away from it. A husband who should have protected his wife chose pleasure over responsibility. And as Cato stepped further from his duty, Jabari stepped closer to the truth, unaware that before the sun set, the quiet road would lead him straight to the iron cage behind his sister's house. Cato leaned back against the polished wooden chair, the warm glow of lanterns casting long shadows across the walls. He sipped palm wine and smirked, glancing toward Lela, who sat opposite him on a cushioned mat. "Do you see how she obeys me?" he said proudly, his voice loud, though a tremor of unease lingered beneath the boast. "I can make her stay or leave with a single word. No one questions me in this house." Lela smiled, leaning closer, letting her perfume drift into the air. "Ah, my strong man," she purred. "But tell me, why settle for control alone? You deserve more. You deserve someone who shines like you do, not a village woman bound by customs and old rules." Cato's chest swelled, the pride feeding like fire. "She is my wife," he said, but his voice lacked certainty. "Yet sometimes the village feels heavier than I can bear." Lela's fingers brushed his hand. "Then leave it all behind. Tradition will not bind a man with your ambition. You are meant for comfort, excitement, power. Why bow to a wife who cannot satisfy your dreams?" His eyes flickered. The words made his ego swell, and yet a shadow of doubt crept in, the voice of conscience quietly whispering beneath Lela's praise. Far away, the dust of the road stirred under the boots of a disciplined soldier. Jabari had returned, his uniform crisp, his posture exact, carrying not only small gifts for his sister, woven cloth, a basket of spices, but also the weight of honor for his family and village. The rhythmic click of his boots echoed authority and purpose. As he walked into the village square, neighbors noticed him immediately. Old men lowered their eyes, women tightened their grip on their children, and even the market boys froze, sensing a tension that hung like smoke before a storm. No one dared meet his gaze. They whispered among themselves, their silence heavy with knowledge they had tried to hide. An elderly man stepped forward, hesitating beneath the wide arms of the baobab tree. His voice trembled as he cleared his throat. "Jabari, I must speak. Something has happened in your household. It is not, well, it is not as it should be." The words fell slowly, heavy as stones, each one echoing the weight of truth that had been ignored for too long. Jabari's fists tightened at his sides, the disciplined soldier fighting to remain calm. His chest heaved, yet his face remained still. The brother within struggled, the part that loved his sister, that sought justice, clashing with the training that demanded restraint. "The boy who hides behind gossip and pride," he whispered under his breath, "thinks he can rule with cruelty. He will learn what it means to dishonor family." The village watched, caught between fear and awe. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath as a moment of reckoning approached, the scales of justice slowly tipping under the watchful eyes of a soldier whose heart carried both fury and the weight of discipline. Jabari walked briskly through the dusty path behind the compound, the weight of his boots pressing authority into the earth. As he rounded the corner, his eyes fell upon a sight that stole his breath, a small iron cage, harsh in the glaring sunlight, and inside it his sister Amina. She sat on the bare ground, her clothes clinging to her from sweat, her hair matted, but her eyes, oh, her eyes, burned with a quiet fire, reflecting both suffering and strength. "By the gods," he whispered under his breath, voice steady but edged with anger. "What cruelty has reached this place?" The village, sensing the storm that had been gathering in silence, began to gather. Neighbors peeked from doorways, children held close by their mothers, elders lingering just out of sight. The air was thick with anticipation, as though the earth itself was waiting for justice to take form. Jabari's uniform gleamed under the sun, the sharp lines of discipline standing in stark contrast to the twisted act before him. He stepped closer to the cage, his presence a living symbol of order. Authority must protect, not destroy, and every villager felt the shift in power as the soldier's shadow stretched across the ground. Amina lifted her eyes to her brother, silent but pleading. "Do not let my pain lead to blood," she seemed to say. "Choose wisdom over wrath. Let mercy shape your hand." Her gaze held a quiet courage, the kind that rises when love battles injustice, and even the birds seemed to pause their songs, sensing the moment. The distant thrum of drums began to roll through the village. Word traveled quickly. The elders were being summoned to the sacred baobab tree, the place where tradition weighed heavy and justice had long roots. The drums called everyone to witness, preparing to confront one of their own with the weight of law and morality. Cato returned along the dusty road, his mind still clouded with pride and anticipation of a leisurely evening. But when he saw Jabari standing tall before the iron cage, the uniformed figure cutting through the sunlight like a blade, shock froze him in place. His lips parted, but no words came. Arrogance faltered, and the false confidence he had built over months of jealousy began to crumble under the unflinching gaze of both soldier and village. Whispers rose, first soft, then louder, carrying across the courtyard like the harmattan wind. "Shame! Shame!" one woman murmured. Another man shook his head, muttering, "Pride cannot hide in the open." The collective weight of judgment settled over Cato like dust in the dry season, suffocating the ego that had led him astray and signaling that consequences, long delayed, were now inevitable. Amina's eyes softened slightly as she looked at her brother, the hope of justice tempered with a prayer for restraint. The village waited, the air taut with expectation, and the stage was set for truth to rise from the shadows of betrayal. The village square stirred as the first light of dawn touched the red earth. Smoke from early cooking fires curled around the towering baobab, its roots knotted and deep, as if holding centuries of wisdom. People gathered slowly, murmuring in hushed tones, their feet pressing dust into the ground. Elders took their seats in a circle, faces lined with age and authority, hands resting lightly on carved staffs that had seen countless disputes and reconciliations. Above them, the sacred tree stretched its branches wide, a silent witness to all deeds, good and ill. Its bark seemed to hum with memory, holding truth and lies alike. Cato stood in the center of the square, his chest stiff, shoulders squared, yet beneath the bravado tremors of unease betrayed him. The elders' eyes were steady, unwavering, voices calm yet demanding. "Speak, Cato," one intoned. "Explain why you have brought shame upon this household." The weight of every gaze, from mothers with children to neighbors leaning from doorways, pressed against his conscience. Even the sun seemed to lean closer, exposing him. "My wife, she," Cato began, faltering. I feared betrayal." His voice quivered as he waved at unseen evidence. "I had reason to doubt her loyalty." But the council listened, expressionless. "Where is this proof?" another elder asked. His words fell like dry leaves to the earth. Cato's claims wavered in the open air. Jealousy and pride alone could not stand against the scrutiny of the village. A chorus rose then, voices of women who had known Amina all her life. "She has never wronged a soul," one said. "Her hands are gentle, her heart faithful," another added. Even neighbors who had whispered gossip stepped forward. "Patience and kindness have always been hers," an older woman said, eyes shining. Slowly, the community's silence corrected itself. Murmurs of support grew louder, like the wind pushing through the trees, carrying truth where deceit had once flown. Jabari stepped forward, the crisp lines of his uniform catching the sunlight. He moved without haste, yet every step carried the weight of discipline. His voice, calm but unyielding, rang through the square. "A household is not ruled by suspicion, nor honor destroyed by whispers. Justice does not need to shout. It needs only to be spoken." The villagers felt the strength of order, the reminder that authority, when guided by righteousness, protects rather than harms. He held up his hands, showing gifts of support. "During the drought, I aided this farm," he said, voice steady. "Silently, so as not to take pride from another. Let it be known, pride often feeds on strength borrowed from others, and those who act without knowledge will fall." Murmurs traveled through the crowd, each revelation bending the tide against Cato's false claims. Finally, Jabari placed several letters upon the flat stones in front of the elders. Each page told a story of Amina's loyalty, honesty, and diligence. Inked words that cut sharper than knives, letters carrying the truth that had been hidden beneath suspicion. The sun rose higher, casting light across the papers, revealing deeds unspoken but undeniable. Truth unfolded slowly, a dawn after a long, dark night, and the village watched, hearts steadying, as the weight of justice settled over them all. The air in the village square thickened, charged with whispers that moved like the harmattan wind, dry and biting. Faces shifted, curiosity twisting into suspicion, suspicion hardening into judgment. Mothers covered their mouths, gasping softly, while men lowered their heads, murmuring in low tones. Even the children sensed the tension, their wide eyes darting between the elders and the trembling figures at the center. The weight of public opinion rolled through the crowd like a tide, and it threatened to sweep Cato's pride away with it. Amina's knees buckled beneath her as the heat of scrutiny pressed down on her chest. Her hands, once steady and gentle, trembled as the shame became unbearable. Slowly, she sank to the earth, the red dust clinging to her dress and skin. The murmurs died to silence as every eye fell upon her frail figure, realizing the human cost of wounded pride. The collapse spoke louder than any accusation. It revealed the suffering that gossip and jealousy had wrought. Then the voices of the women rose, piercing the hush like songbirds at dawn. Mothers and daughters, long silent observers of tradition, now dared to speak. "This is not discipline," one cried. "A woman's loyalty is not to be chained under the sun." Their voices carried strength, echoing against clay walls, stirring the awareness that customs twisted without mercy could harm rather than heal. The square felt the first tremors of change. The elders leaned forward, eyes narrowing as they considered the weight of authority. "Discipline is guidance, not torment," one began, voice steady but stern. "Honor is not measured in chains, nor obedience enforced with cruelty." They debated, balancing respect for tradition with the undeniable proof of wrongdoing. The fire of truth tested their wisdom, forcing them to reckon with the line where guidance ends and abuse begins. Finally, the council spoke. "Cato has dishonored his marriage," the eldest declared, voice ringing through the square, carrying the weight of ancestors and community alike. Silence fell, a hush that pressed on every heart, letting the judgment settle like the first rains on parched earth. The villagers held their breath as the consequences of pride and deceit were about to be laid bare. "The husband who betrays trust must make amends," the elders continued. "He will apologize before all, offer compensation to restore the dignity he has stolen, and understand that failure to do so will cost him both his marriage and his land." Every word weighed heavily on Cato, his chest tight with the realization that public shame, sanctioned by tradition, could no longer be ignored. Justice had come, and the village, silent and solemn, bore witness. The village square seemed to hold its breath as Cato's face shifted, the mask of confidence cracking. His jaw, once firm with pride, slackened as the weight of truth pressed upon him. Eyes that had commanded respect now darted nervously across the elders and neighbors, seeing for the first time the reflection of his failures. The murmurs of the crowd, soft moments ago, grew into a hum of realization. False strength could not survive where honesty reigns. Cato's heart sank as understanding dawned upon him. Lela's sweet whispers, the promises of pleasure and escape, were no comfort. They had fed his insecurity, inflamed his jealousy, and left his home in ruin. He felt the bitter taste of his own folly. "I was blind. I have destroyed what I should have cherished," he murmured, voice trembling. The shame was heavier than any palm wine could numb. At the center of the square, the iron cage was carried forward, its rusted bars glinting under the sun. The villagers' eyes fixed upon it, the silent witness of cruelty and pride. It had been a prison for Amina, a symbol of a husband's folly, and now it spoke louder than any words. Mothers shook their heads, fathers lowered their eyes, and children sensed the gravity of lessons carved into iron. Jabari stepped forward, his uniform crisp, his expression unreadable but resolute. Justice did not shout, it simply stood. The silence that followed made Cato shrink, the realization that truth could not be hidden pressing upon him. The voices of the village seemed to whisper in unison. Strength is measured by protection, not domination. Honor is earned by care, not cruelty. Cato sank to his knees in the red dust beneath the ancient baobab, his hands trembling on the ground. Pride bowed, humility rising to take its place. "I kneel," he said, voice breaking. "I kneel before the elders, before my wife, and before my brother." The words carried across the silent square like wind over dry earth, finally filling the emptiness with accountability. He raised his head slightly, tears brimming, and spoke again, each word weighted with remorse. "Amina, forgive me. Jabari, forgive my weakness. I have let jealousy and pride rule my heart. I accept whatever punishment the elders deem just." The square absorbed his confession, the community's gaze now both witness and arbiter. In that moment, dishonor had been acknowledged, humility restored, and the seeds of justice planted, ready to grow in the village where tradition and truth walked together. Amina rose slowly, the red dust clinging to her simple dress, her body weary yet her spirit unbroken. She stepped forward, every eye in the village square fixed on her, from the elders seated beneath the baobab to the children peeking from behind doorways. Her voice, though soft, carried over the stillness. "I have been tested by shame," she said, "but my heart holds no anger for those who have erred. I forgive, yet I demand respect. A woman's place is not beneath chains, but beside honor and dignity." Her words hung like a gentle wind, stirring the hearts of neighbors and elders alike. The elders leaned closer, listening as Amina continued, "Let this council teach all men that discipline is not cruelty. Let our traditions guide our hands with justice, not fear. And may women's voices be heard, for wisdom often walks in quiet steps." Jabari stood beside her, his uniform crisp, the weight of authority balanced by his restraint. He shook his head slowly, speaking to Cato in a measured tone. "Remember, power without wisdom destroys homes. True strength lies in protection, not control." His words cut sharper than swords, but he lowered his hand, trusting the elders to deliver judgment fairly. Then, with a sudden symbolic strike, the iron cage that had held Amina captive was broken. The clang of metal against stone echoed through the square. Chains fell to the earth, and a collective sigh of relief swept through the villagers. The object that had once symbolized pride twisted into cruelty now lay shattered, a visible end to oppression. The elders huddled together, speaking quietly, agreeing to revise customs that allowed such punishment. They recognized that tradition must protect the innocent, evolving under the light of truth. Women, emboldened, stepped forward to speak freely in council matters, their voices rising like morning birds greeting the dawn, bringing a new balance to the village. As the first rays of sunrise lit the clay rooftops and baobab branches, a sense of renewal spread over the red earth. The village exhaled in shared reflection, a community reborn from pain and strengthened by justice. And the wind carried the lesson far and wide. Pride blinds the foolish, gossip destroys homes like wildfire, and true strength lies in restraint and responsibility. Tradition, when guided by wisdom, must always walk hand in hand with justice.